I know this is going to sound absolutely insane, and frankly, I'm still reeling from it all, but I need to ask you guys something immediately. Right off the bat. Before I even get into the nitty-gritty details of how I got here. Was I wrong for what I did? Because after everything, after being humiliated and thrown out like trash, I systematically dismantled my boss's entire company, brick by excruciating brick, until there was nothing left but a smoldering ruin. And I did it without technically breaking any laws, which is the really twisted part. So, tell me, knowing just that, would you have done the same thing? Would you have watched everything you built, everything you poured your heart and soul into, get ripped away, and then just let it happen? Or would you have fought back with every ounce of cunning and intelligence you possessed? Because I chose the latter, and honestly, I don't regret a single second of it. So, let's rewind a bit, back to a time when I actually liked my job, when I genuinely believed I was part of something special. My name is Alex, and for 7 years, I was the heart and soul, or at least a significant artery, of a burgeoning tech startup called InnovateX. We built custom software solutions, mainly for mid-sized businesses looking to streamline their operations. I started there right out of college, fresh-faced and brimming with ambition, as a junior developer. I worked my way up, pulling all-nighters, skipping weekends, drinking more coffee than was probably healthy, all to make sure every project was delivered flawlessly. Every client was happy, and every line of code was perfect. Eventually, I became the head of product development, overseeing a team of 10 brilliant engineers, and being directly responsible for our flagship product, Synergy, which was a huge hit and accounted for about 70% of the company's annual revenue. My boss, Arthur Sterling, was the founder and CEO. In the early days, Arthur was the visionary, the charming frontman, but I was the one translating those visions into tangible, working products. We had a good relationship, or so I thought. He trusted me implicitly, often saying I was his right-hand man, the brains behind the operation. He even hinted at making me a partner, giving me equity, a real stake in the company I'd helped build from the ground up. Those promises, those whispers of a future together at the helm of InnovateX, kept me going through the toughest times. I genuinely believed in Arthur, in our mission, and in the future we were building. My team was loyal to me too. We were a tight-knit unit, a well-oiled machine, and our success was undeniable. We had just closed our biggest deal to date, a multi-million-dollar contract with a national logistics company, all thanks to a custom module within Synergy that my team and I had designed and implemented. It was a massive win, one that secured InnovateX's financial future for the next few years. I felt on top of the world. I thought I had finally arrived. Then, the cracks started to show, subtly at first, like faint hairline fractures in a seemingly solid wall. Arthur started bringing in new people. Consultants, he called them, from his old network. One in particular, a slick-haired, silver-tongued man named Julian Vance, became his constant shadow. Julian was supposedly an efficiency expert, brought in to optimize our workflows and streamline our departments. From the moment he walked in, I sensed trouble. He had that predatory glint in his eye, always observing, always whispering to Arthur, never actually doing anything productive himself. He'd sit in on my team meetings, offering vague, unhelpful suggestions. And then somehow, those suggestions would find their way into Arthur's directives, often contradicting what we were already doing successfully. My team started getting frustrated. Morale, which had always been incredibly high, began to dip. I tried to talk to Arthur about it, expressing my concerns, telling him that Julian was disrupting our established, effective processes and alienating key personnel. Arthur would just wave me off, saying, "Alex, Julian is looking at the bigger picture. Trust me. It's for the good of the company." But it wasn't for the good of the company. It was for the good of Julian, and perhaps for some new, insidious plan Arthur was cooking up. Over the next few months, Julian slowly but surely started to undermine my authority. He'd directly countermand my decisions, go behind my back to Arthur with fabricated complaints about my team's lack of flexibility or resistance to innovation. He even started taking credit for projects my team had already delivered, presenting them as his own initiatives during company-wide meetings. I found myself constantly defending my team, defending myself, and trying to keep our projects on track amidst this growing chaos. The air became thick with tension, and the once vibrant atmosphere of InnovateX turned cold and suspicious. I kept telling myself it would pass, that Arthur would eventually see Julian for what he was, a leech, a parasite, but I was tragically, naively wrong. The day it all came crashing down is seared into my memory with painful clarity. I was called into Arthur's office, not for our usual weekly catch-up, but for an unscheduled, urgent meeting. Julian was already there, perched on the edge of Arthur's desk, a smug smirk playing on his lips. Arthur didn't even look me in the eye when I walked in. He just stared at his hands, fiddling with a pen. "Alex," he began, his voice devoid of any warmth, "we've been doing some restructuring. Julian has presented a compelling case for a new direction in product development, a more agile approach." My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming. "And to facilitate this," he continued, finally glancing up, his eyes cold and distant, "we've decided to move in a new direction. Your services are no longer required at InnovateX." He didn't even say, "We're letting you go," or "You're fired." It was, "Your services are no longer required," like I was some outdated piece of machinery. Julian chuckled softly beside him. My mind raced. 7 years. 7 years of my life, my blood, sweat, and tears. Gone, just like that. I felt a surge of white, hot anger, followed by a profound sense of betrayal. "Are you serious, Arthur?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely a whisper. "After everything, after synergy, after the logistics deal," he just shrugged. "Business is business, Alex. Julian has a fresh perspective. We need to adapt. Adapt." The word tasted like ash in my mouth. I looked at Julian, who was now openly grinning, enjoying every second of my humiliation. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about restructuring. This was a coup, meticulously planned and executed by Julian, with Arthur's full, willing cooperation. Julian wanted my position, my team, my legacy. And Arthur, blinded by Julian's smooth talk, and probably some promise of higher profits, had handed it to him on a silver platter. I wanted to scream, to rage, to smash something, but I held it in. I simply nodded, turned on my heel, and walked out, my entire world shattering around me. The next few weeks were a blur of anger, grief, and a burning desire for retribution. I collected my things, said my goodbyes to my stunned team, many of whom were as loyal to me as I was to them, and openly expressed their disgust at Arthur's decision, and officially left InnovateX. The severance package was insultingly small, a final slap in the face. I spent days locked in my apartment, replaying every interaction, every promise, every betrayal. The injustice of it gnawed at me. I had built that company, or at least a huge part of it. I had cultivated its most valuable asset, synergy. And now I was out, discarded, while Julian, a parasite, was reaping the rewards. That's when the idea started to form, a tiny, insidious seed of thought that slowly began to take root and grow. I wasn't just going to get another job. I wasn't just going to move on. I was going to make them pay. I was going to take down Arthur Sterling and InnovateX. And I was going to do it in a way that left no doubt about who was truly indispensable. I wasn't interested in direct revenge that would land me in jail. I wanted something more elegant, more surgical. Something that would dismantle their entire operation from the inside out, using only the knowledge and connections I had rightfully earned during my 7 years there. I spent weeks meticulously planning, researching, and strategizing. I had to be careful, Every step had to be legal, untraceable, and utterly devastating. I wasn't going to just burn down their house. I was going to make sure their foundation crumbled first. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. On one hand, I could have just licked my wounds, found a new job, and tried to move on, letting Arthur and Julian get away with their betrayal. On the other hand, I had a unique opportunity, a lifetime of knowledge about InnovateX inner workings, its strengths, its weaknesses, its vulnerabilities, and I could use that to strike back. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have let it go, or would you have devised a plan for righteous, albeit subtle, vengeance? My plan had 3 main phases, each designed to chip away at InnovateX's core until it collapsed. Phase 1: target their talent. InnovateX's biggest asset wasn't just its software. It was the brilliant engineers who built and maintained it. My former team, they were loyal to me, and many were disgusted by my firing. I knew they were unhappy under Julian's agile reign, which essentially meant more work for less recognition, and constant micromanagement. I reached out to them, one by one, subtly at first, through LinkedIn and encrypted messaging apps, pretending to just be checking in. I didn't immediately offer them jobs. Instead, I listened. I let them vent about Julian's incompetence, Arthur's newfound indifference, and the increasingly toxic work environment. I planted seeds of doubt, talked about how unappreciated their hard work was, how their skills were being wasted. Then, when the time was right, I unveiled my next move. I started my own consulting firm, Apex Solutions, specializing in custom software development. It was small, just me at first, working out of my home office. But I had a clear vision. I would offer exactly what InnovateX used to offer, but with better service, more client focus, and, crucially, a far more supportive and rewarding environment for my employees. Once Apex Solutions was formally established, with all the necessary legal paperwork and a simple, professional website, I started sending out feelers for projects. Simultaneously, I made more direct, but still carefully worded, offers to my former team members. I highlighted the creative freedom, the respectful management, the competitive salaries, and the potential for real growth and equity in a new venture that truly valued their contributions. It was a slow trickle at first, 1 engineer, then another, then 2 more. Each departure was a quiet blow to InnovateX, a draining of their intellectual capital. Arthur and Julian were scrambling to replace them. But good talent isn't easy to find, especially when your reputation for treating employees poorly starts to spread. Within 6 months, I had poached 6 of my 10 former team members, including my most senior and experienced developers. InnovateX's product development department was decimated, leaving Julian with a skeleton crew of less experienced staff struggling to maintain synergy, let alone innovate. Phase 2 undermined their product, legally, of course. Synergy was InnovateX's crown jewel, its cash cow. I knew every line of its code, every architectural decision, every hidden vulnerability. I didn't want to steal it. That would be illegal and unethical. But I knew how to create a better version. Apex Solutions, with my newly expanded team, began developing our own flagship product. A direct competitor to Synergy, which we tentatively called Catalyst. We took everything that was good about Synergy, everything I had designed, and improved upon it. We fixed its known bugs, added features clients had been asking for years that Arthur had always ignored, and built it with a more modern, flexible architecture. We even incorporated some of the agile methodologies Julian had so clumsily tried to implement. But we did it right, with proper planning and execution. We focused on user experience, on intuitive design, and on seamless integration. The key was that Catalyst was not a copy of Synergy. It was an entirely new product, built from scratch, but with the benefit of my intimate knowledge of the market and client needs. thanks to my 7 years at InnovateX. This was perfectly legal. I owned the intellectual property of my mind, not InnovateX's. This was the same knowledge I would have taken to any other job, but now I was using it to directly compete. We worked tirelessly, fueled by a collective sense of purpose and a shared desire for success. When Catalyst was ready for its soft launch, it was everything Synergy should have been and more. Phase 3: target their clients. This was the most delicate part, and where my deep understanding of InnovateX's business model truly came into play. I knew their client roster inside and out. I knew who was happy, who was struggling with Synergy, and who felt neglected by Arthur's new, streamlined approach. I didn't directly call InnovateX clients and tell them to switch. That would be unprofessional and potentially legally problematic if I had signed any non-compete clauses, which I hadn't, thank goodness. Instead, I focused on networking within the industry. I attended conferences, reconnected with old contacts, and leveraged the excellent relationships I had built over the years. I started showcasing Catalyst, subtly highlighting its superior features, its better support, and the fact that it was being developed by the same talented engineers who had built the original Synergy and understood their needs implicitly. My former clients, the ones I had personally worked with for years, started reaching out to me. They complained about InnovateX declining customer service, the bugs in Synergy that weren't getting fixed, and Julian's increasingly arrogant and unhelpful demeanor. They were frustrated, feeling abandoned. When they heard I had started Apex Solutions and developed Catalyst, their interest was piqued. I offered them trials, personalized demos, and incredibly competitive pricing. I made sure to emphasize the continuity of expertise, that the people who truly understood their business were now at Apex. One by one, InnovateX's most valuable clients started making the switch. It wasn't a sudden exodus, it was a slow, painful bleed. First a small, frustrated client, then a medium-sized one, then, crucially, the national logistics company, the multi-million-dollar deal that I had personally closed. They had been struggling with unresolved issues in Synergy under Julian's management, and when I presented Catalyst as a stable, more feature-rich, and better, supported alternative, the decision was easy for them. Losing that contract was a catastrophic blow to InnovateX. It ripped a gaping hole in their revenue stream that they couldn't possibly fill. The climax wasn't a single dramatic confrontation. It was a slow, agonizing implosion that I watched from a distance, with a grim satisfaction. InnovateX's reputation plummeted. Their remaining engineers, overworked and underpaid, started leaving in droves. Julian, exposed as an incompetent charlatan, couldn't deliver on his grand promises. Synergy, without proper maintenance and updates, became buggy and outdated, losing its competitive edge. Arthur, who had once been so arrogant, started frantically calling clients, trying to salvage relationships. But it was too late. The damage was done. The word on the street was that InnovateX was a sinking ship, and the only person who knew how to steer it had been thrown overboard. Apex Solutions, meanwhile, was flourishing. We were growing rapidly, attracting top talent, and securing new, lucrative contracts. My team was happy, motivated, and thriving. We had built something new, something better, out of the ashes of my betrayal. Arthur eventually had to make drastic cuts, laying off employees, selling off assets. I heard through the grapevine that he was desperately trying to sell the company. But with its primary product failing, its talent gone, and its client base eroded, InnovateX was essentially worthless. It wasn't long before the news hit the industry papers. InnovateX had filed for bankruptcy. It was over. The company that had once dismissed me, the company I had helped build, was gone, and I, the person they had discarded, was now at the helm of a thriving, successful competitor built on the very principles they had abandoned. I never spoke to Arthur or Julian again, after that day in Arthur's office. I didn't need to. My actions spoke louder than any words ever could. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if I went too far. Was it truly necessary to dismantle their entire operation? Or could I have just moved on? But then I remember the look on Arthur's face, the smug grin on Julian's, the utter disregard for my 7 years of dedication. I remember the feeling of betrayal, the humiliation, and the absolute injustice of it all. And then I think, no, I did what I had to do. They created a monster, and then they unleashed it. They thought they could discard me and take everything I had built, but they underestimated my resolve, my knowledge, and my ability to turn their weapons against them. It was a brutal lesson for them, but a vital one for me. It taught me that sometimes, the most effective revenge isn't loud or violent, it's precise, strategic, and utterly devastating. It's about building something better out of the wreckage they created, and watching them crumble under the weight of their own short-sightedness. Like this video if you were on my side in this whole insane ordeal. Subscribe for more stories like this, where betrayal leads to unconventional triumphs. And share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I want to hear if you think I was justified, or if I crossed a line. I'll see you all in the next story.